Are creators like me to blame for Blake Lively's media takedown? Let's talk about it. By the way, I'm KJ Miller. I am a founder, lecturer, and content creator. I love talking about all things business and pop culture, especially when those two things intertwine. If you like any of that, be sure to subscribe. Now let's get into it. Okay, so first and foremost, the context for this video is, of course, the lawsuit that Blake Lively filed this weekend against Justin Baldoni, his studio, and his business partner over all of the bad press that she has received in the last several months in the wake of the release of the film It Ends With Us. I did make a 7-minute video over on TikTok. I will link it in the description, where I give some of my major takeaways after having read the entire lawsuit. And if you'd like to read the whole thing, which I encourage you to do, it is available on New York Times. Now, I won't rehash everything I said, but in a nutshell, my takeaways were: one, it does seem pretty clear to me that real misconduct happened on that set. Real sexual harassment, real workplace misconduct. I think they present a very compelling case that that did in fact happen. Two, that a real takedown effort did occur from Justin Baldoni and his team, and both the PR team and the crisis management team. Again, I think enough compelling evidence is presented that there was an orchestrated effort to tarnish Blake Lively and discredit Blake Lively. And then three, my final takeaway was that I wanted to spend more time thinking about the role creators like myself played in this entire campaign, the PR campaign against Blake Lively. Because, by the way, I am a creator who made a video about Blake Lively back in August when all of this was at a fever pitch. And that's actually going to be the subject of this video. As I mentioned then, I really wanted to give myself more time to think about it and then come to you with a longer form point of view on where my head is regarding my role specifically and creators' role more broadly in shaping online narratives about current events. I'm going to be focusing on 3 central questions. The first question that I really want to focus on is, what is my responsibility as a creator when it comes to reporting on and giving my opinion on pop culture and current events? What, if any, responsibility do I have? What ethical responsibility do I have? What moral responsibility do I have? Really just digging into that for me, myself personally, not really speaking on it for anybody else. The second question I want to dig into is, based on my thoughts in question 1, what will I do differently in the future, if anything, right? Like, what actions might I take? How might my approach to being someone who commentates on pop culture change in the future? And then third and finally, I do want to just give sort of my updated thoughts on this specific situation between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and just the PR campaign therein. Now that I've digested a bit more news, read a bit more articles, seen a few more videos, and just had more time to ruminate, where am I now on all of this? Okay, so let's start with question 1, which is, what is my personal responsibility? What do I think I'm responsible for as it relates to my career in pop culture commentary? It feels a little funny to use the word career because I will just tell you, I kind of fell into this. I did not start my TikTok channel or my YouTube channel with the goal of having my primary content be pop culture. I actually started my TikTok channel because I wanted to help promote my makeup company, Minted Cosmetics. And I started this YouTube channel because I wanted to have a platform where I was better able to market myself as a business expert. And that's for a number of reasons. We don't have to talk about them in this video, but that was the goal for both platforms. It just so happened that the videos that popped off, particularly on TikTok, were about pop culture. They were about Taylor Swift, about Beyonce, about Kelly Clarkson, about whatever TV show that I had just watched. Those were the videos that popped off way more than my makeup videos. And by the way, I've done a ton of makeup videos over on TikTok. I don't know if I have a single one that has cracked like 30,000 views. Meanwhile, when I talk about pop culture and other such nonsense, I have many, many, many videos on those topics that have 1 million+ views, okay? And if there's one thing I know about business, it is that when a customer tells you what they want, you give it to them. In this particular case, when the audience says, KJ, we like your viewpoints on what's going on in current events, we like your insights and opinions on pop culture, I'm going to give the people what they want. And it works out for me because I love it. I do love pop culture. I love consuming it. I love discussing it. I love digging into it. I love the mess of it. So this works out for me that people tend to like the things that I have to say, but it was not my goal. The reason I think that's relevant is because given that this is very much a side hustle, and it might not always be, but right now it is very much a side hustle, the way I think about my responsibilities is going to be different than someone who, for instance, is a journalist, a full-time journalist, and certainly is going to be different than an actual news organization that has the bandwidth and the resources to do really robust, thorough fact checking and source hounding and all of these things that I do not have the resources to do, and two, don't think I necessarily should be expected to do, just given that this is something that I enjoy, something that apparently I'm at least a little bit good at, but not something that is my primary or main source of income, or even the primary way I spend my time. I still run a whole business. In fact, I run 2 full-fledged multi-million-dollar beauty brands. I also teach. I teach business school, like for real, not just for funsies. Actual students paying actual tuition rely on me. So this is something I enjoy doing. But I mention all that simply to say the standards I hold myself to are going to look a little bit different than like a journalist. And hopefully people can understand that. So what are those standards? Well, there are 2 things that I personally think I have a responsibility to do. The first, and this is the bare minimum, is to never knowingly spread false information. And I think that, that truly is the bare minimum. I would hope anybody who gets online and says anything wouldn't knowingly say things that are false. However, we know that that happens all the time. We know that there are people who get online and gleefully lie. But I do not do that. That is a standard I definitely hold myself to. And as I said, it's the bare minimum. Taking it a step further, my second sort of standard that I hold myself to, and I've actually, I would say, tightened up on this one in more recent months, is wanting to make sure that I have some modicum of belief that the things I am saying are based on truth. And the way that I can have any confidence that the things that I'm saying are based on truth is that I do some amount of due diligence. Now, I recognize I just gave myself a lot of qualifiers, and that is purposeful. The qualifiers of some amount of due diligence and the qualifiers of based in truth, those are important because, again, this is my side hustle. It is not my full-time job, and there's only so much I'm going to have the bandwidth to do. And for some people, that might not be enough. And I can completely understand that. If you say, I only want to view content from and get information from, organizations like the New York Times, because I know that their journalistic standard is top notch. And that would be perfectly fine. We all have to decide in this life who we do and don't want to listen to. I can say for myself, I really enjoy taking in opinions on different things going on in current events and pop culture from a variety of different people. I like to think that I am media literate enough and savvy enough that most of the time I can make a pretty good estimation of whether the thing I'm listening to is A, fact versus opinion, and B, if it's opinion, if that opinion is based on anything reliable. Obviously, I don't always get it right. I think we can all say we have learned the extent to which the media is being manipulated as a result of this lawsuit. But I like taking in opinions from all sorts of different people and creators. I think a lot of people do. So what does it look like when I say I want to make sure I've done some amount of due diligence so that my opinions and the things I'm saying are based in truth? What does that look like? Well, the diligence I usually try to do, if I know I'm going to be speaking on something controversial or where I'm going to be speculating on something, I usually try to make sure either I am basing my opinion on something I have heard first person, okay? Like if I'm talking about a person, I'm basing my opinion on something I've heard that person say or something that they've written, or I am basing it on something that I have seen in a reputable news organization or in some form of a publication that I find to be trustworthy. And I will give you an example of how I have sort of evolved on this. So several months ago, I made a video about a rumored quote from Ben Horowitz. You may have seen it on TikTok, or you may have seen my follow-up video I made here on YouTube. And the rumored quote that he said was that billionaires prefer Black women. And I made a very quick kind of throwaway TikTok about it. And then the next day, he came out and clarified, I never said that. And so, of course, I definitely had a little bit of egg on my face, even though I did say in my first video, apparently he said, because I wasn't entirely sure if he had said it. I just knew a lot of people were saying that he had. So I sort of kind of tried to cover my tracks. But that was a lesson for me that, okay, if you're going to report on something someone said or did, again, you need to do better diligence. And that's how I ended up with what I am calling my standards of either it's because I've gotten it from the primary source or it's because it's been reported on in what I deem to be a reputable place. And I personally think that that is enough diligence for what it is that I tend to do in my videos about pop culture. Very rarely am I someone who is trying to simply report the facts. One, I'm not a journalist. Two, I think what makes my videos interesting, particularly over on TikTok, but here as well, what makes them interesting, I think, is my opinion. And that opinion is based on my own perspective, my own biases, my own judgments, my own experiences. So very rarely am I picking up the phone to make a video or sitting down to YouTube to make a video where I'm just trying to lay out the facts. There are actual journalistic organizations for that. What I'm trying to do is give you my opinion based on what I know to be true or believe to be true. So I think that sort of like standard that I have of either checking if it's coming straight from the horse's mouth or checking if someone reputable has said it, that to me feels like enough. Again, you have to decide if it's enough for you as someone who may or may not be consuming my content. But for me, that is enough. So now let me give you an example of what that continuum has looked like after I sort of made that decision. So I made that video about Ben Horowitz, and then I had that thought, okay, you need to do a little bit better at this. So the next time, maybe there were more instances in between this, but the next time that comes to mind for me where I had this thought of I need to make sure I'm doing some amount of diligence was when I went to make a video about how much Cynthia Erivo was paid for Wicked, because it was going around all over social media that she had only been paid $1 million, where Ariana Grande had been paid $15 million. And I don't know where those numbers originally came from, but I know I kept seeing it come up. And I said, I want to make a video about this, but I want to know if it's true. And so I went online to see who is saying this, like what reputable organizations are quoting these numbers. And I found an article on Yahoo News. So to me, Yahoo News felt reputable enough that I could cite it in the video and start my video by saying, according to Yahoo, Cynthia Erivo was only paid $1 million, and that is not enough. You need to 20x that number. She was flying through the air, giving us full belt, full vocals, giving us, tear jerking acting. It needs to be 20x that minimum, right? I'm paraphrasing. I'll link that video too in case you want to see it. But to me, it felt like I did my job because not only did I find the article, but I cited the article. So then later when it came out, the studio clarified that Ariana and Cynthia were paid the same thing. They did not actually clarify how much they were paid. So it still could have been $1 million, in which case I stand by what I said. When they came out and clarified, I said, okay, I didn't have that information and I used the information I had. I sought out a source. This source said XYZ. I cited my source. So I felt okay about that. I didn't think, oh, now I got to take down that video and I got to issue an apology to this, that, and the third person. I did not think that. I thought for what it is I do, which is offer up my opinion on various pop culture news and events, I felt okay with the fact that I had found a source and cited that source and given my opinion, which actually wasn't even about the so-called discrepancy. My opinion was simply that $1 million for what Cynthia Erivo delivered was not enough. And I stand by that, okay? 8 figures minimum she needs to make for that role. Another example I will offer is this recent video I did about Becky Hill and Barry Cogan. It was being rumored that Sabrina Carpenter and Barry Cogan had broken up because Barry cheated on her. with an influencer named Brekkie Hill. Mind you, I had never heard of Brekkie Hill or Barry Kogan. So I thought it would be kind of a fun video to deliver this news as if I were delivering it to all Black people, because I assumed none of us knew what the heck was going on because we didn't know these white people. I thought that would be a funny lens to deliver the news through. And Brekkie Hill had reposted the rumors about her cheating on, or about her having this affair essentially with Barry Kogan. And to me, that felt like, okay, we checked the box on the first person narrative. You're posting it, that means I can talk about it, right? So then later, multiple days later, when she came out and said, I didn't actually do this, again, I didn't feel bad because I felt like, well, ma'am, I don't know how else I was supposed to interpret your post. You say you posted it sarcastically. I don't know how I was supposed to know that. I don't know you. Okay. So I don't know when you're posting sarcastically, sardonically, optimistically, euphemistically. I don't know you. So I took your post at face value and I feel okay about that because ultimately I really didn't care so much about the quote unquote affair. I cared about bringing what I thought was a fun lens to messy news. And I think other people thought it was fun too. That video has 2 million views or something. But I give both of these examples specifically because these are both times where the information that later came out either proved it false or just gave more color. And in both instances, I feel like I cleared a standard I'm comfortable with. And again, that might not be the case for all creators, and it might not be the case for all viewers. You might think, oh, KJ standards are way too lax, way too lax. I'm never going to watch another video again. I hope you don't think that, but you're allowed to think that. I just want to be clear about what my standards are. And I wanted to take some time to think about, do I feel okay about them? And the answer is, as of right now, I do. And the reason I wanted to go down this path at all is because I did make a video about Blake Lively when she was in the midst of all of this PR crisis and tumult. And my video, it didn't mention Justin Baldoni at all. It didn't try to defend him at all. I didn't know anything about him, and I still really don't. But my video was about the marketing of the film, and in particular, Blake's role in the marketing of the film. Remember, she is a producer, listed as a producer on the film, and she went on record talking about the fact that she was more than an actor on a film, talking about the creative decisions she made, how she got involved, how she brought her own wardrobe, how she gave scene directions and suggestions. She was very involved, and she was a leader in some aspects on this film, according to her. Again, you can find the interviews where she says all of this, and you can find her producer credit. She also made the final cut of the movie, was given the permission to make a new cut of the movie by Sony, and they went with her cut. So she was a leader on the film, and knowing that made me feel confident enough to talk about her role in the marketing of the film and also speculate on why she would, want to go in that direction. What makes all of this feel much murkier and much seedier is the fact that she had gone through real sexual harassment in the workplace, or at least that's what her complaint alleges, and what I would argue a lot of the evidence points to. It points to real workplace misconduct and real sexual harassment. And because she actually went through all that, had I known that, I don't think I would have made a video speculating on how tone deaf the marketing was or why she would go down that path, just because it would feel unnecessarily mean to someone who went through real workplace hell, right? I'm still a human. So even though it would have passed the smell test to me of, am I basing this on available information that has been verified, it would have passed that smell test because I'm a human being and because I hate the fact that she went through what she went through on that set. Had I known all of that, I probably wouldn't have made that same video, simply just on a human level, not wanting to pile on to someone who went through something really, really difficult. But the fact that I didn't know and really couldn't know none of these allegations were out there in the ether back in August when a lot of us were commenting on, the tone deafness and how in poor taste a lot of the marketing was. The fact that I didn't know and couldn't know actually leads me into my answer to question 2, which is what would I do differently, or what might I do differently in the future based on what I'm saying my standards are, and also based on sort of my experience in this particular instance as it relates to Blake Lively. And what I will say is, now that it is even more clear to me how much social media manipulation really can be done, and oftentimes is being done at the hands of different PR firms, crisis management firms, Hollywood elites, whatever. Now that it's clearer to me the extent to which that is happening, I'd like to implement, I guess you could call it a third standard for myself, which is to pause and reflect when a woman specifically is the target and the center of an outsized amount of online hate. And I will say, I have already been in the habit of sort of pausing and reflecting and digging in a little bit when it comes to media narratives around women. That is actually the entire premise of my podcast. Quick plug for Two Queens, Two Crowns, where we look at women who have historically been pitted against one another in the media and ask the question, what's going on behind the scenes here? Is there a real beef there? Oftentimes there is. Think about Brandy and Monica. There was real beef there. Think about Lady Gaga and Madonna. These are episodes we've done. There was real beef there. However, even if the beef is real, is it at the level and the extent to which the media is painting it to be? And is there a reason that we can't be fans of both and we can't give both of them their due for their accomplishments, even if there's tension there? Do we have to actually pick a side the way oftentimes the media tells us we need to do, or fandoms tell us we need to do, right? So I've already been in the habit of kind of peeling back the layers a little bit as it relates to media narratives around women in conversation with another. So I think the new standard I'd like to hold myself to is to do the same sort of thing when I notice that a specific woman is the target of a lot of negative backlash. And I might come to the same conclusion, right? I might look at that negative backlash and come to the conclusion, she's earned that backlash. She's done these bad things. She has said these negative things. And so the backlash she is getting, the narrative that is out there, it is the right one. What I'm not trying to do is make it seem as though I will never say anything critical about another woman again, particularly when she's undergoing a lot of media backlash. I'm not making that promise, because sometimes these backlashes are earned. What I am saying, the third standard, I guess I want to add to my little standards or box checking is, have I stopped and reflected on whether or not there could be more at play here than what immediately meets the eye? And I want to do it specifically for women because it is so clear, just so clear, that women are often scapegoated. We are often gaslit. We are often treated poorly by men in power. That is true. It is just true. I don't really feel like giving a whole dissertation around it because, hello, look at anything, look at any organization, look at any business, look at any government. It's just true. And so that feels like another good gut check for me to add to myself as I think about continuing to play in this media landscape and pop culture commentary. So with all of that said, I want to touch on question number 3, which is, what are my updated thoughts about the Blake Lively lawsuit and the orchestrated PR effort now that I've had a bit more time to think about it, and now that I've had a bit more time to read and digest some more information on it? And this might be somewhat unsatisfying to hear, but I think where I'm landing is that multiple things can be true at once. For example, it can absolutely be true that Justin Baldoni hired this crisis management team, who then hired another team to sort of do social manipulation and boost and amplify positive posts about him or negative posts about Blake. who, may have been commenting on certain things, may have been contacting certain journalists who were ready to put out hit pieces. All of that could be true. And it could also still be true that the majority of the negative sentiments that were expressed online about Blake Lively were organic. Those two things can both be true. I'm not saying necessarily that they are, but they can be. It could just very much be the case that a lot of things aligned around Blake Lively at the same time. Because if you actually look at her career, there have been a number of times where similar sorts of stories have emerged about her being difficult to work with, about her castmates not really liking her or continuing to engage with her, about her plantation wedding and how tone deaf and off-putting that was. These stories have emerged about Blake Lively over time. And so then when you get to this moment of it ends with us and it feels like all of those things are transpiring at once, coworkers who she's unfollowed and is no longer appearing at events with, rumors about her being difficult to work with because her husband is rewriting scenes and she did a final cut of the movie and that final cut replaced Justin Baldoni's final cut. The marketing of her hair care line at the same time as she's marketing a movie about domestic violence, while speaking about wearing your florals and kicking it with your girlfriends. It could be the case that all of those things happening at the same time created a bit of a powder keg, and organically, a lot of people felt like, I got something I want to say about Blake Lively right now. That could be the case. And they actually talk about this in the New York Times article, that it's impossible to know how much of the quote unquote smear campaign against her was the result of the actions of Justin Baldoni's team versus the result of organic creators, contributors, journalists seeing and noticing certain behaviors and things and wanting to speak on it. It's really impossible to know. I absolutely believe an orchestrated effort took place. What I don't know is how much of what we ended up seeing is the result of that orchestrated effort, right? Because multiple things can be true at the same time. It can also be true that Blake Lively is very much a victim of sexual harassment and workplace misconduct, and not a super likable person. I don't actually know. I've never met her, but it can be true that she's not easy to work with. It can be true that she's entitled. It can be true that she's tone deaf about certain things or aloof about certain things. All of that can be true, and she can be a victim who did not deserve to be treated the way that she was treated on that set. And I would just say generally, one of the lessons I have learned in adulthood is to get comfortable existing in like gray area and gray space, right? Because things are rarely black or white. Things usually happen in here. Every person I love has flaws, right? So because humans are flawed, the truth of certain situations is almost never going to be this person is just bad and this person is just good. Sometimes it happens that way. Often it doesn't. And that's kind of, I think, where I am right now. Again, as I think about this specific situation, I do believe she experienced sexual harassment and sexual misconduct and workplace misconduct. I do believe she was the target of an orchestrated PR effort against her. And I also think it could be true that a lot of the things that we saw happen, a lot of the videos that were made, a lot of the articles that were written would have been written whether those first two things were true or not. I could be wrong about that. But I am holding space for the possibility that that's true, because it doesn't make her any less worthy of our care and concern as it relates to how women should be treated in the workplace. So those are all of my thoughts. I know this is a much longer video than I usually put out. I thought about trying to split it out into multiple parts, but I don't know. I'm not that into that. Once I start an idea, I like to finish it. I hope that you enjoyed it. I want to know what you guys think. I really and truly do. What have I said that you agree with? What have I said that you deeply disagree with? Try to keep it kind in the comments. But, as always, if you enjoy this sort of content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.